Awesome. Well, Rand, good to be here in Salt Lake with you and on this standalone podcast episode to talk business buying, operating, and just ETA community stuff.
Yeah, it's going to be really fun. Thanks for putting this together. This is Matthias bringing us together to talk about podcast on this podcast.
Yep.
And here for SM Bash, we're pumped to see a bunch of people for more community stuff. It's going to be fun.
Absolutely. How's the travel in?
It was good. Like normal flights, nothing to complain about.
Nice.
Yeah. I have trouble like working on airplanes, but doing a bunch of preparation for what we're going to be talking about today here, man.
Yeah, well, you're wearing the shirt for this, the Rand Run.
Yeah.
So why don't we dive right in? So I'd love to hear, Kevin, about your background pre-ETA community building, business buying stuff. Kev, talk about from the ground floor, college onward, and then from there, Kev, segue into like the SMB space.
Yeah. I think a lot of people start these podcasts and they were entrepreneurial from a very young age. They were starting like lemonade franchises, and I wasn't really that way until college. I'd probably say that the youngest I started in the general entrepreneurial space was just like investing. I started investing when I was 16 in stocks. In college, I tried to make that like a thing and day trade, which did not go well. I lost a bunch of money.
Do you have any good
$6,000.
stories of stocks that you day traded?
I have a couple. I went to Boise State, and I was part of our student managed investment portfolio where we managed like 300, 400 grand for a variety of investors who, wanted to basically give a bunch of college kids free money to play with. And I made two like large investments there. One went really well. One went kind of poorly. The one that went really well was really just lucky. It was a triple leveraged S&P 500. It was S&P 500 tracker. So I think the stock ticker was UPRO. And I was like, well, if the S&P 500 is like so reliable and steady and always goes up, why don't we just get 3 times that? That does not work for a bunch of reasons. Like it is pretty dangerous, especially in like turbulent times where you're not really certain that things are going to go well.
Yeah.
It just does not work like that. But I got lucky, and we were in that investment from like 6 months, sometime in 2017 to 2018, and we ended up with like a 30-40% gain. And my professor, we switched professors, and the first professor was like laissez-faire. He was just like, yeah, go for it. Like, you can invest in whatever you want. Sure, I don't care. And then the next professor came in. He was like, whoa, what the fuck are we doing?
Right.
And I was like, what do you mean? And then he told me why this idea it had paid off, but it was a bad idea. And then the other ticker was like a chemical company, which I was like, well, yeah, everyone needs chemicals, but for reasons that I don't know, it took another like 30% dip during a similar period.
Interesting.
It's, Chemours, or it was a spinoff of a larger chemical company.
Buying something that's doing like 3x or magnifier of the S&P, in like turbulent markets to some degree, is almost like putting an extra turn of EBITDA leverage on a project-based revenue SMB, and we'll get there, right?
Yeah.
So.
But it's just much more dangerous.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and then as long as we're moving forward, got a corporate job out of college, didn't really like it. Moved to startups with like more. I don't know. I thought I'm generally an ambitious person, so I started. The first startup I joined was it was a company called Pharmacan. Very small team selling cannabis to seniors to solve things like arthritis, dementia, and psoriasis. Went okay there, but left there. Started my own company making documentaries about seniors in retirement communities to preserve life stories and legacy for future generations of people's families. I could tell you about how that planned out. I started B2C, selling to the grandparents. Didn't work. Went to their children. They loved the idea, but it like still didn't work. And I actually pivoted to a B2B model where the plan was to get other videographers work, because the idea of these is really good. And what you can do is you can like take the videos, the documentaries that you actually film in the retirement communities, do them for the residents for free, and give those materials, give marketing materials back to the residences to use on their social media pages, on ads, as well as like, these facilities give 30 to 90 tours a month to prospective residents and their children. And so this,
wow.
these like documentaries would have been a valuable proposition for them that no other retirement community had around them. Super passionate about that, and it worked okay.
How did you come up with that idea?
I don't know. You just iterate until you find a good customer. The idea was good. Everyone told me they loved it, and then no one would pay for it, which was frustrating. And so, it's like very simple. Like you start scratching off customers. Okay, can't sell to grandparents. Children are still difficult because they can't convince their grandparents to buy into it. But you can absolutely give away a free product that turned into marketing for someone else, because you raise those communities' occupancy rate by a 70 to 80% difference for those is a massive. That specific gap is hundreds of $1,000s in profit for most communities.
Everyone lives free.
Yeah. COVID killed that business pretty quickly. We were in Washington State. We got hit very early on by COVID, and no one knew what was going on in COVID, and like no one knew when it was going to end. And in July, I was finally like, this is not going to end anytime soon. Started figuring out the next thing. Heard a podcast, Brent P. Shore, talking about buying companies. That sounded a lot easier than starting companies.
Which pod was that? Stuff curiosity.
That was My First Million.
Oh,
yeah. Still like those guys. Fantastic pod. Listen to all the time.
Yeah.
So listen to that. Jumped on Twitter. Found a bunch of other people, which is like where other M&A people, which is where the next part of the journey is. Where I meet a guy named John Wilson who's hiring entrepreneur in residence to train someone how to buy and run companies either for him in his portfolio or to invest in them.
What year was this from a time frame standpoint? So
this was 2022. No, this was 2021. Okay, March.
So I got on Twitter March of 22. So this would have been the year before me.
You said you got on Twitter March of 2022. Yeah. Then this was the year before you. Pretty much exactly. I think I started working for John in March or April.
Got it. Okay, so you get on Twitter, you kind of go down the rabbit hole of sorts.
Yeah.
You connect with John, and then what happens? What happens next?
I moved to Ohio. I was born and raised in Washington State, so it's a 44-hour drive, and you lose the time zone difference. So I moved to Ohio.
Why Ohio?
That's where John is. Like that was, that's where he's buying and running companies, plumbing, septic, HVAC, skilled trades businesses.
So the job had to be on site.
Okay. Yeah. Well, initially when we were talking, there were I'd like sort of beat out other private equity people who could actually help him buy companies, because I had this he wanted to start owned and operated a podcast. And, I had this weird background with like videography and making documentaries, which I think he liked. And then the like other private equity people who were applying for the position wanted it to be remote. And I was like, that is a stupid decision to have this cool of an opportunity. I'm like, I don't care if you give me the job. Whoever gets it should be in person though, because it was a phenomenal opportunity. I still think I probably got dealt an incredible hand that no one else got. There's other people who are hiring like entrepreneurs and residences, but it's like a couple people. There's just like Kelsey Larrick, Michael Girdley, but I don't think many other people got the amount of like access that John gave me.
And like, think of it in all honesty. I mean, who wouldn't want Rand Larsen instead of like Archibald, like Proctor the Third, right?
Yeah,
like the PE guy from Wharton or Harvard. Like you're just more fun to work with, honestly.
I appreciate you saying that. It's interesting when I think back, because I look back and like even the early Acquisitions Anonymous episodes, I was like, guys, can you please spell out what EBITDA is? I don't even know how to spell that, like to Google it online. Can you please tell me what the acronym is? And like that is the lack of information that I had going into acquisitions. Like I knew nothing.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So let's segue back for a second. So you went to college in Idaho. When I think about Idaho, I think about like Napoleon Dynamite and like, hey Tina, like whatever the phrase is. What is it like living in Idaho? And then also you're in a frat too. I was looking at your LinkedIn to prepare for this. What any good stories that you can share there? I know there's kind of a code of conduct, right? What happens in the frats is the frat, but what got you to do that, and then just Idaho living?
Idaho living first. I mean, it's just like super outdoorsy, lots of kayaking, couple fun lakes there, boating, very, very outdoorsy. Probably my favorite place that's a part of the city. Good, like good, decent hiking, tons of foothills around the area. Really like Boise. And for the fraternity, so I don't know. There's fun stories. I was our risk management chair, which meant that like, yeah. So I had to deal with like all of the shit that came down from any type of issue.
So you're that guy.
Yeah. I was I don't know. I was bulking during the time, so I was literally the big guy in like a leather jacket who was standing at the front door, like deciding who gets in and who doesn't.
Interesting.
And some nights that was much more difficult than others, like in Halloween or any type of large party. We called them sober brothers, and I was sober most of the time.
Was there a pretty big Greek scene at Boise State? Or
No, not really. The fraternity I was in was Teak, Tau Kappa Epsilon, and a lot of other colleges have like actual houses dedicated to them. We just had like people's duplexes.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So I went to Wisconsin Mass, as you may or may not know. I actually rushed a fraternity. Long story short, I decided not to join, but there were a couple that got like disbanded or disbarred from campus while I was there.
It's a problem, man. It's a problem. Yeah. It's I don't know. There's some cult-like behavior that goes on. We didn't do anything nefarious, certainly.
No. Yeah. When you were there, no one died. I take it.
Yeah. No one died.
Good.
That I know of.
Yeah. So going back to the So, okay, pivoting from frat life to being the entrepreneur residence, working for John, what was the day-to-day like doing that, basically? Like, what did you do?
Yeah, I'd probably say there were maybe 3 main activities we did every day. One was honestly just, like, learning and shadowing John. I shadowed, a lot of seller calls, like... I obviously didn't play a part in negotiations, but like taking notes, and I mean watching John just go through the process of acquiring a company, sitting in on phone calls, that kind of stuff. Another part was just own an operator. We were getting it off the ground, so that was just a large project. And then like early on, I was in kind of a do everything role, so we let go of our recruiter at the time. I stepped into those shoes for like a month or 2 and just started hiring, plumbers, drain techs, that kind of stuff. Let's see. And later on we got into actual operations. So it's hard to say, because that role had to do kind of a little bit of everything. But eventually we bought 3 companies in like 6 months apart from each other, which is a ton of work. During that time, I built and like documented everything that we were doing, so we could basically hand off my role to anyone who wants to be, the new like acquisitions assistant to John.
Yeah. So making SOPs, just standard operating procedures.
We have like a 55-page document I built to walk someone through everything that you could want to know about basically helping John buy companies. We built our like SOP or like a wiki sort of, but it was really just a Google sheet with a timeline of when do you get certain like pieces of seller's information, like bank statements, tax returns, like when do each of those things fall and when do you need them and when do they need to be communicated by the bank. And we used a lot of like Live Oak's information on to create our own organized system of it, because a lot of times when you work with a bank, it's like, hey, by the way, now we need this, and you get that and they say, okay, now you need this, and you have to go back to the seller and say, hey, now I need more information. It's like, why didn't we just do this last week?
And basically the process is like piecemeal, right? Because they want one thing, then that leads to the next, next.
Versus just getting all of it at once. It's just an annoying process, and it should have been done better. And now we built it to know all of the information we need immediately, so instead of a bank coming to us and requesting something and us going to the seller to get it, we would already have it, so we could email the bank in the same day and then wait for them to come back to us a week later and ask for the next thing, which we had already gotten also.
Now, were these SOPs all written, or were any of them like Loom videos? So I know now like some people talk on Twitter about make the Looms to train the VAs and they can train the next VA, and before you know it, you have the Russian army of VAs.
Helping you buy a egg carton company. That's a cool story. Sarah Miller. We did a bunch of Loom videos as well. There were, I'd probably say that like the big three core pieces were like maybe 2 or 3 Loom videos, but they were like an hour each, walking through each stage of like an acquisition process or just like explaining it. And then a second part was the large Google Doc, which was just a ton of writing. And then the third piece was a Google Sheet, which again was just like, hey, here's the pieces of information, checklists, when you need to get it by, which stage of the like information gathering process that you need to get that information.
Got it. So you went from working for... So one thing I want to cover is you went from working for John to starting the peer groups thing.
Yeah.
And then there was like kind of a transitional period between there where you're doing ghostwriting stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Walk through that and kind of what brought you from being the entrepreneur residence for John to pivoting to the ghostwriting and then doing the community building stuff now.
Yeah. This was a funky transition. So the plan when I was working with John was to go buy and run a company and for him to invest in me to do that. I started that journey, and I started it prematurely. Like I didn't have the amount of cash to retain the amount of equity that I would want in an acquisition. Buying a company, going through 5 years of work and giving away like 80-90% of the equity to someone else was just like didn't make any sense to me.
Right, and I think you probably have to be the one PGing it too, right?
Yeah, and that's like, it's just that model didn't make any sense to me versus me just starting my own business, making another like 100 or 200K to then go and actually put down most of a down payment and give away 10% equity or instead of 80.
Yep. And doing more of like the common preferred model from you being the majority common holder and preferred being different.
Yeah. So anyways, I started that premature. I was like, okay, I got through the LOI process and basically saw, if I got into dead deal fees, I would have to go back to a W-2 and work to recoup that for another year until I go buy another company and like restart the process. I was like, this is not a smart thing to do,
right?
Because dead deal fees would like set me back years if that happens.
And like in all honesty, who wants to go back to W-2? I mean, you have to.
yeah. Now it's much more difficult.
Push me to this chair before I go back.
Yeah. So the like one skill I had was just like social media writing. I hit up a bunch of friends, like asked them, slowly built like a small clientele. I tried to scale that business a little bit, which just meant like hiring other writers, which proved to be incredibly difficult. Good writers are very, very hard to find. It's hard to get them to care about a client's work. But I realized at that time, once I was like, okay, this is gonna be a very difficult business to scale.
Yep.
I had this other thing, which I had been doing for a while, which while I was working with John Wilson, I took a vacation, went home to Washington State, and I met up with a buddy who had recently bought a large commercial HVAC installation company. I go to visit him, and
just out of curiosity to pop in, is this someone on Twitter that I know?
They're not active.
Okay.
No, you probably do not know them.
Okay.
So anyways, I go to meet this person. I'm not going to say their name because there's just like, for everything I'm about to say, I'm not going to say their name. They were going through an incredibly difficult period of their business. They had a large like exposure to construction and installation, and a lot like they worked with a ton of builders. I think interest rates had just risen at this time, which was like spring 2022. Like the first interest rates had like just been announced, and interest rates rising had just been announced. And that caused builders to pull jobs. It caused them to pay him even slower on work that he had already performed. This leads to a ton of cash flow problems.
Yep.
He's like 5-6 months into the acquisition, so he's just getting, punched in the mouth with all these pains that keep happening. And I'm talking with him. We're like at a diner, just chatting, and it's very clear within 10-20 minutes of talking that he's in distress. And he starts bringing this stuff up to me, and after a while, I'm like, how can I help this person? I'm just trying to act like a therapist, right? Just like ask him, how does he get out of it? And then after a while, I'm like, I can't help this person. Like I was managing our septic and drain company at the time. We were doing, a quarter of his sales.
Yeah.
And, I have no ownership, no equity in the business. So he's just at a completely different stage. And I say, hey man, like you need other people who actually relate to you. who share these similar problems with you and talk to them regularly because like I am not the person who's going to help you solve these problems. And he says, yes, like I need other people, but he didn't have them at the time. I had a small like following on Twitter. I was like, well, would you like it if I like tried to get people together for you? And he said, yes, that would be amazing. I sent out like a few tweets. I'm sure if you scroll far enough back, you can find them. And that's how we started the first peer group.
Got it. Super cool story. So basically trying to help someone solve a problem where you yourself did not have the solution at hand, but you knew the people collectively that were in that industry that would be able to kind of help them. And that was the impetus.
Yeah, exactly. I think that first, it's like I didn't even know what a peer group was back then. And I think that first peer group had just a very random collection of people who, it was mostly just a business therapy call. We've moved on to something like way more professional now. I was going to say way more, just more professional now. More structured on like feedback and getting advice and helping each other run better companies versus just like complaining to each other. But there's an element where, you do want to vent with another business owner who understands you about something, shitty happening in your company.
Yeah, and so the comment you mentioned, just while you were talking on that point, I was looking at Prime over time here, and it's jumped. I mean, I remember back a couple years ago, and my phone's being slow, so I don't want to kind of sidetrack the podcast. It was like 3.5, and now it's 8.5. And so if you're taking out debt when Prime is 3.5 or 4, and then it goes up if you don't have a good debt service coverage, you're gonna find yourself in that spot.
This was a maximum. He took out every dollar of debt he possibly could.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so the next thing I kind of want to talk about, so the peer groups, you covered, Kev, how you started that. How has that developed since you started that?
Yeah. So we started that first peer group. I ran it for free for a little over a year. Started another peer group, ran that one for free. And eventually, when it came time to like move from the ghostwriting business to like the next thing, when I realized the ghostwriting was like not gonna work, the juice wasn't worth the squeeze is actually the appropriate term. It's just like you can grow it. It's just a ton of work.
When was this around from like a timing standpoint, like year, month-ish, spring?
Oh, man. I honestly can't remember. It's sometime later 2022.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, that was around the same time. It was like January 2023, I think I told myself I was going to take the peer groups a lot more seriously. And it took me a while to actually do that and to actually get out of doing the ghostwriting. But that was around the same time. It was like January 2023 is actually when I at least wanted to make the transition to the peer groups. And sorry, your question there was more on the transition.
Yeah. So more on the transition side. So like going from the ghostwriting to the peer groups and kind of having that become what it is now, where you have multiple ones that are built out. What did that look like as far as getting the traction in the peer groups and Kev making that pivot? If that question makes sense.
Yeah. The first thing I did was just like, well, is this worth like being the thing? And I think I had started, it was just those two peer groups. And I was like, well, I've been doing this for these guys for one peer group for like 12, 14 months, another peer group for like 6, 8. And I said, well, like, if I'm going to figure out if this is a good business model, like some percentage of people in these groups are going to pay me.
Yeah.
And so like, that's the validation right there, is like actually charging for the thing that you want to build a business on. And it worked. One peer group was a little bit more of a struggle. I had to like really convince people. Another one was just like, yeah, sign me up. Let's do this.
Got it.
And then after that, like moving even deeper, it just goes, I guess, into the classic, I don't know, like put one foot in front of the other story of being a business owner. I'm like, okay, try to launch new peer groups. You can scroll through most of my Twitter and see like, okay, this is when I really started launching it.
Yeah.
I launched like 3 peer groups at the same time. I expected them all to go really well. I'm pretty sure they all failed. It's such an interesting thing that I've learned of like what makes a good peer group and how the ones that I thought were going to succeed easily totally failed. Not totally failed. It's they just weren't good enough for people to pay to commit to.
I feel like that's kind of the classic story of entrepreneurship to a degree, like, to peeling the onion back a layer, right? Like sometimes you have an idea, you want to see if it's going to work, and you just have to kind of test it, right?
Yeah.
Like, unless you're buying a business when you're starting something, you don't always know if there's product market fit. It sounds like that was what you're working to figure out. You got the 3 going, and some worked, some didn't.
Yeah, exactly. It is just like, I think everyone has ideas of great businesses, and like I have the same thing all the time. But the proof is, does it actually make money? Yeah. Especially when you're getting it off the ground. Like you can see a bunch of people's businesses ideas on Twitter, and the numbers that like the amount of times that they actually charge for something and make money from it is I'm guessing it's lower than the amount of ideas people put out on the internet.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. I mean, in Kev, starting my business, I'm not gonna change this from talking about you to me, but you find something where you think there's a market, and you kind of have to go through the skill factor, getting your name out there. I imagine that's the same with the peer groups. You had one person that was kind of the champion, like, hey, this is going well. Then they tell their friend, and before you know it's a snowball effect where you get the critical mass going. Was that kind of what it was like with the peer groups? No,
not as much as I would have thought. That just hasn't happened as much as I would have thought. I think a lot of times these peer groups, they do like get built out of word of mouth and like authority and reputation. And like EO, YPO, Vistage have a ton of that. But even they do a lot of sales and marketing. Like Vistage chairs are aggressive. Pretty much all of them are aggressive. They push hard. They are salespeople. EO, I don't know, maybe a bit less so. They do a bunch of like free dinners. And then I'm not really sure how YPO markets itself, but all
what
these.
What is EO?
Entrepreneurs Organization. Okay. I think they've got like either the number is either 4,000 or like 14,000 members nationwide.
Wow.
Yeah, it's big. I think their average yearly fee is like $8,000. I think.
Wow. What is your goal for these peer groups? Like, what do you want it to become?
Yeah, that's a good question. I
sorry to put you on the spot there.
Yeah, well, there's a balance of like having a big audacious goal and doing what I actually need to do every single day, which is literally DM people who I think would be great fits to be in a peer group with each other, start them, run them on a free trial, be engaged, ask people for feedback on how they're going, get like actually build the next peer group. That just takes 99% of my focus, and even picking my head up of like what lies down the road 5 years. I'm like, so little, it feels like it doesn't matter right now, because the actual work it takes to get to wherever is in 5 to 10 years in the future is way more, micro, like me sprinting every single day versus me like pulling myself out and thinking about much. Maybe that's the wrong mentality, but that's the way like my mindset is currently, of just building the next peer group. But to answer your question, yeah, I think like it'd be awesome to build EO. Like it'd be awesome. Yeah, I think probably closer, a little bit niche down. We've got the Silver Tsunami happening. Pretty much all of our members are acquisition entrepreneurs, and in my opinion, acquisition entrepreneurs probably need the most help with other people who are doing similar things, right? Because there's certain a level of like ambition, risk oriented ness that it takes to go out and buy a company or multiple.
Yeah, and like if you think about, someone going from a W-2 working in corporate finance to buying a plumbing company, they presumably have no to minimal transferable experience.
Yeah.
And the other people in the group, or ones that are maybe a little bit further along, do have that experience, so they can tell them like, hey, these are going to be roadblocks or surprises that will come up.
Yeah, and there's a few elements there. Like number one is, someone who's used to corporate W-2 life, right? Jumping into business ownership, just business ownership in general, right? The second part is acquisitions, which has its own dynamic of like you're a new person, new company. You have to have you usually have to have an ongoing relationship with a seller and have to make them happy, even though most of the time they're not going to be making decisions that you as the new business owner agree with. You have to get buy-in from the team. Like just the acquisition part of operations is enough of itself to be something different from, EO, where you're an acquisition entrepreneur. Sure, you're going to be probably put in a peer group of other people who have been running their businesses, probably mostly, certainly not with a $5 million personally guaranteed SBA loan on their balance sheet. Like, that's very, very different. And then there's the third element of you buying into a plumbing company where you were the corporate accountant and now you're in plumbing and you don't know what that is. And you need to talk to other acquisition entrepreneurs who are buying skilled trades businesses.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's levels there.
So my thought is, like, I would imagine, given how many people you've worked with in these peer groups, that you've learned a lot about different industries. What are, like, just super high level, what is, like, a takeaway, if, I don't know if this is kind of a corny generic question, from running these about, like, things that you didn't envision or that you wouldn't have known what it's like being an operator, or that these people have shared in these peer groups, like, just surprise things that come up running a business?
Man, there's like some really difficult topics that I would have never thought happened that could happen possibly as a small business owner. I'll move through them briefly, but like these are things that have not common in like our peer groups, but these have happened. Is like, buying a company and then 5 months later, an employee dying, and like how do you deal? And that's like on the job. Dying. There's actually an article on my website, smbcommunity.co, that goes through an entire dialogue between me and a towing company owner who had an employee die on a job site, exactly what he was doing minute to minute. Because what the hell do you do? And again, like you just acquired this company 5 months ago. Yeah. You barely know towing at this point. What the hell do you do? A couple of the answers there were like, well, you call the other towing company owners, and ask them for their support. And this is an industry where if you've been in towing long enough, you will have an employee die, and that you have to deal with it. You have to like figure out how to deal with it. And what that means is you have certain, like, this is an easy part. You imagine buying a company and not knowing that after like an employee workplace accident, you have either 16 hours to report something where like you've got a fork in the eye. If it's an eye injury, it's reported at a different timeline than it would be like a hand or a foot injury. If it's a death, it's a much shorter timeline. I think it's like 4 or 8 hours that it needs to be reported by OSHA, or you run into an entirely different like liability where you delayed getting back. Like it looks nasty now, and this is something that you acquired this business. You had no idea that this is something that you were supposed to do. Luckily, this specific business owner handled all those things and had good advisors to help him walk through that process of legally exactly what he needed to do during these things.
For something like that too, I mean, isolating the legalese and OSHA, you have like the personal side, right, trying to support the family of the person that died, which is huge, right? Like death is terrible. But then you have the business side, and it's how do you like balance those, I imagine, right?
Yeah. And the article goes into that balance because it's tough. You have to do the best of what you can for that family, and there's also a chance that they sue you for I don't know, a negligence. In this case, there's like almost a 100% chance that the towing company owner is in the right and he did everything he possibly could to prevent this situation, but this is just a dangerous industry. And then the other couple things on my mind of like, what are the other things in business ownership that are either difficult or you wouldn't expect? One is just like partnership dissolutions, which are just brutal. I think they've happened twice in our peer groups now, and it is just, they come from stories of people knowing their business partners for 15 years, and it just doesn't work out. Someone stops doing what they said that they were going to do, or potentially goes through like a mental health struggle.
Yeah.
And that impacts the business relationship. And then, you as the business owner who's like actually involved and committed, you have to deal with that, which means taking on more debt, buying a partner, getting investors, and also negotiating by kicking someone else out of your business. Or getting a lawyer to help you fight with another person's lawyer. It can get nasty. That's another one. And then there's like another few I can say, but I just won't because I don't want this to be too depressing.
Yeah, right. And just to kind of keep things on track here. So pivoting from people dying at sewing companies to something more positive. So you are what I describe as a road warrior. Like
road warrior.
You're big on driving. My whole thing is if something's farther than 4 hours, maybe 4.5 hours, it's gonna be a plane ride for me. It's not gonna be a car ride. There's some math involved there depending on like if you have to connect or like what airport is. But anyways, so last fall you drove 10 hours from Akron, Ohio to Columbia, Missouri for Main Street Summit. Talk about like just super high level, like your love for driving. I mean, you just seem to be like always driving to these meetups.
I don't know. I just like driving. I don't know. There's no reason or rhyme for it. I balance it with like both doing like, if it's 10 hours to Missouri, it'll be like 3 hours of work stuff, which is just me putting a bunch of calls on my calendar of either prospects or just getting ideas from current peer group members on how I can improve it, just improve what I'm doing. So like a few hours there, frankly, a couple hours of just like bumping to some music, just having some fun.
Yeah. What type of music do you like?
Oh, man, it depends. Honestly, whatever like the hippiest, boppiest stuff. I don't know. Like,
does it depend where you're driving, city versus highway? Like,
yeah, cities I end up like turning down the music, especially if it's a large city. I'm just like I need to pay attention. It's one of those things where I'm like I can't see. I need to turn down the music. Yeah. But highways, I pretty much just go hard.
Got it. So we're now gonna pivot to the shirt.
Yeah, let's talk about it.
Talk about the Rand run just from a super high level, like the impetus behind it and how the idea came to mind.
Yeah, so for everyone maybe either listening to this, if you go to the video, you can see me wearing a shirt of... I promise you, this is not North Carolina.
Do we have the shirt on video?
Yeah. This is not North Carolina. This is...
It's also not California.
Yeah, well, it's definitely not California.
You've seen all my tweets in California.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I have. Yeah, I hope that acquisition goes well. Good luck with the water rights. So anyways, this was the original planned Rand run. The way it started, it was like a joke from Reg Zeller on Twitter. I don't know if it was a joke. He posted something about like local communities. I thought it was inspiring. I was like, and I've always had this idea of like, why aren't people doing local SMB owner meetups like everywhere? Every single time I've gone to an event or to a local meetup, it's been really fun. I don't know why people don't do it. Especially, I'm like, you guys are down the road, right? You're in Madison, right? Like. There's 10 of you guys, and you guys could talk with each other. I bet you'd want to, but why is no one doing it? So anyways, I had this idea. Reg commented on me to help the Denver event. Kyle Dersler, his Denver small business owner meetup event there, and I helped. I flew out. I mostly just did the getting promotion of it.
This was the Denver one back in February, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep. So I just did a bunch of promotion for it, let a bunch of people know about it. There's a variety of ways I did that, but generally I was just like emailing and DMing people saying, hey, come to this meetup, it's gonna be fun.
And that one had like what, 30, 40
60
people? 60?
Yeah, 60 to 70 was the number.
Yeah, because people were coming and going at different times, but yeah, that was packed.
Yeah, it was fantastic. Yeah, shout out to Kyle Dersler. Zen Windows.
He's
fantastic
the guy with the Viking beard.
Yeah, he's the guy with the Viking beard. That's how I regularly introduce him.
I'm just gonna, next time I see him, I'm just gonna call him the Viking.
I don't know if he enjoys that so much. I think he tolerates it when I say it. Okay. But anyways, we do this event, and I meet up with one of the guys in my peer groups, and all my peer groups are virtual. I don't think I've ever seen anyone in person. And I see this guy, and this is I don't know. This story is like more important to me. He left our peer groups. The reason he left wasn't because of any problem with the peer groups or with the other members. He left because he was getting out of his business. He had gone through the gamut. He was like the W-2 corporate sales guy. He bought a company for all of the good reasons that you've read on Twitter, and he ended up struggling with the journey just a lot, for a variety of reasons. But for the most part, it was like the stress was tough for him. The time away from his family was tough for him, and he didn't see the financial reward as like really worth the amount of pain that he was going through. And he was in a bit of a tough industry, which was hard to scale. It's one of those interesting niches, but very hard to scale out of because it's a niche.
Can you share the industry?
No, it would be too direct, especially the fact that I met him in Denver. You'd know who he is. So anyways, he gets out of his business. He successfully places a GM, and he's like, I'm super happy for him. He's gonna go raise his family. He's got a new kid on the way, and he's gonna raise his family. He's gonna take a couple months, and he's gonna go back to a W-2. He's got a minority ownership in the business that he bought that he's gonna retain, and as long as that GM stays around, I assume everything's gonna go well. And I see him in person. He was the second person ever to sign up for our peer groups. He was the second person ever. And I was like, man, I've seen this guy go through the entire gamut of the small business ownership journey. And it was just a super cathartic moment, like meeting him in person. Very special. Very happy we had a good long conversation. And at the end of it, I was like, dude, I want to meet your family. Like let's go. I want to live with you. I was like, why do I feel this way? And it just brought a new perspective of, local relationships, which I just think are, incredibly powerful, especially being able to build with others and talk with other people who are in front of you and around you, and not just on a Zoom call. I love the virtual peer groups, but the in-person stuff is just a different experience in a really, really positive way. And again, the question on my mind was like, why isn't everyone doing this? I was like, okay, well, I've got time. My business is literally called SMB Community. It's the only thing I care to invest in. I've got a great incentive to grow the SMB community. My business is literally just community focused. What was that Charlie Munger quote? Show me incentives, I'll show you the result. Yeah. I don't see a lot of people who are incentivized to grow the community side of what we're doing, on Twitter. And I thought, hey, this makes sense for me. I thought, hey, if I meet enough people, I can probably build a couple peer groups out of it. And this is probably going to be a really, really fun series of events. And it's probably going to kick up a lot of dust, and it'll be a really, really interesting experience either way, whether it pays off or it doesn't. And that's sort of how I started it. And from there, it was more about, executing, which just meant planning the road trip and reaching out to a bunch of folks.
Wow. Super incredible.
Thank you.
What? In all honesty, I mean, what you've built with these meetups is nothing short of incredible. Just seeing the community that's come together in each of these pictures. I saw last night as I was preparing for this, I was watching a video of one in Toronto where it was some guy's truck, and everyone was checking out the truck. I don't know the whole backstory.
Yeah,
there.
I can tell you, man. I took notes on this for every single city of the interesting things, and this was one of the most interesting things that happened. So this was Toronto, and Toronto had, man, this is crazy. I've got family in Toronto, and originally we were going to do it at a bar, and a couple people reached out to me and said, hey man, that bar is going to be packed on Thursday. You're bringing 40, 45 people. That's not going to work. It's going to be way too packed. No one's going to be able to find each other. Even, we're all wearing name tags. It's going to be way too busy. So I look for a new event. My cousin is, he's got he's a subcontractor for a security company. And that means he does a bunch of events. And he knows some managers of local bars around the area. So he hooks me up with one of them. I think it was Black Lab Brewing in Toronto. And did we go to that event, right? So that's the one thing, is that we changed the original event that we went to.
Yeah.
And then at that event, everything goes really well, meet a bunch of people. It's, just have a good time. And then towards the end of the night, I'm it's 8:30 p.m. The event was supposed to be over by 8.
Yeah.
But we stayed for a while because everyone was having a fun time. And this guy walks in, and he's got the thickest, French-Canadian accent you've ever heard. I'll spare the audience from trying to do an impression, but it was unbelievable. And he walks in and he's like, "What these going on?" Okay, I did the accent. He's like, "What these going on?" And I was, and
What is?
more French than Canadian. And I'm like, "Well, this is like a meetup of small business owners." And I'm like, obviously, I'm the host. Somehow he also found, we met like right at the cash register at the time. And he was like, "I am a small business owner." I was like, no fucking way. I was like, "Okay, cool. What business?" And I don't know. I was expecting to hear any of the boring stuff that, you and I have come to love. Like,
right.
I run a plumbing company, whatever. And then he's like, I forgot what he said. He was like, "I outfit Mercedes Sprinter vans into," then he had some really fancy words like outdoor living experiences, or like he had a really cool phrase that he said on top of it. And yeah, he takes these $60,000-$70,000 Mercedes Sprinter vans and he
Just
he
like
outfits
pimps
them.
out.
Yeah, he pimps them out for to be totally, what do you call it? Like van life. It's like the pinnacle of van life. It's like that's the vehicle you want.
I've heard van life can be dangerous for young couples. I don't know if you
not in one of these vehicles. I bet he's got some security features, man.
Right.
Man, I wish I could give him a shout out. I forgot the name of his business. And just to tie it up, like his van was parked outside, and I was like, "Hey guy," I like took the remainder of the people. I was like, "Hey, I know the event's over, but this guy's got a dope van. He's also a small business owner. Let's go check it out." And we did. You can see it on my Twitter. We did like a walkthrough of his van.
Yeah.
Showers. He's got some like awesome batteries. I think you can stay off the grid for like 3 or 4 weeks at a time because of the quality of battery that he had, and it was really unique experience. So we got a few more of those in different cities that we visited.
Yeah, and that video, I mean, I'm not sure what date it's going to post, but I did retweet that because I thought it was pretty awesome. It was, my internet's being slow here, so yeah, we'll keep going.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess just to be cognizant of time, just to kind of speedball a couple of questions that you hear.
Yeah.
So how many cities for these meetups?
16. We hosted in 15 of them. The DC event, Steve Wrestlers, I was not a host. So we hosted events in 15 cities, but there were, on the Rand run, there were 16.
Which city had the best beer and which had the worst beer?
I don't know which city had the worst beer. That wasn't a thing I really kept track of. And believe it or not, I only had beers in like 8 cities. Like I didn't drink a beer in every single city.
So of those 8, like
it was Baltimore. I forgot what, and again, this is also on Twitter. Adam Markley recommended like some dark beer, which is usually what I go for, and it was absolutely delicious. I forgot the name of it. I forgot what it tasted like, but I was like, I'm not really a beer guy, but I was like, I want another one of those, which is pretty rare for me.
Got it. Okay, this might actually not be a speedball question. In your view, what has been your impact on the SMB community?
Oh man, I don't know. In my view, I thought about this like, it's hard for me to see the results. I was thinking about this. I got like 300 followers from Twitter off of this. Frankly, I expected like over 1,000. I was like, this has got to be like this is really cool what I'm doing. Like people must love this.
Yeah.
And people did. But like it didn't get like the result on Twitter I was like sort of expecting. But what did happen was a lot of the people I really respect in the community, everyone on SB Twitter, reached out, not everyone, but a lot of people reached out to me personally just to say like how cool it was that I was doing.
Yeah. And
knowing that other people who I really respect, who are 8, 10, 15 years down the road that I am, admired what I was doing, that was really important for me.
Yeah, no, what you're doing is super cool. I mean, I know people like Eric Pacifici, one of our good friends, Reg, and others are definitely supportive of it.
Yeah.
What do you think is missing from the SMB community, either Twitter or just like as a whole, like the operator space, post-acquisition, or even on the acquisition side? Like, what do you think is missing, if you had to pinpoint one thing?
I'll say 2 things. Number one is just, again, this goes back to like no one is incentivized to grow and support it. I think it's the reason that like Madison doesn't have a regular small business owner meetup. Like I've got a list of 10 people. Like you guys should just do it, and that's what you and me are going to do. We're going to throw out a Madison, Wisconsin meetup. It's been great. Like, the reason that a lot of people aren't doing this is because no one's incentivized to do it. And I'm incentivized. Again, it's just that Charlie Munger quote. Like, you get the incentives. The incentives lead to the outcome. Like, very clearly. And right now, what we have is, like, no one is really incentivized to grow the community, and this is, like, the only thing that I care about and I'm focused on and I'm heavily incentivized to do.
You're the champion of the community.
I wouldn't. Thank you for calling me that.
Someone has to be the guy, right?
Yeah. Sorry, what was your original question? I had.
Yeah. What are we missing in
I just think people aren't talking about what happens after the acquisition. It's the same thing of just like, yeah, we've got the horror stories that we've already talked about today, but how do you actually operate your company? How do you actually handle the transition? The idea that there's no it's like, on Twitter, where's the thread that says, here's my guide to firing employees? No, people can't post that because people's employees are going to see that.
Right.
And that's why you've got operators who can't talk about that stuff because their employees are going to see them and they're going to have real problems in their company because of what's on their Twitter.
Right.
And there's other things like that. Like, hey, here's our post-acquisition announcement speech. I mean, we've got, how many people have you helped buy companies? And, like, we should be, like, getting all of this data information together to help new people who are acquiring companies, or talk more about the philosophy of, like, what makes a good transition.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people who are, again, incentivized to help you acquire a business, but not incentivized to help you with what comes after, which is, like, what I'm trying to talk about.
Yeah, so it sounds like just generally the lack of knowledge that's out there but not disseminated across the space for new entrants.
Yeah, man, it's not even out there. It's just, like, it's not out there. It has to be created in the first place. And it does just start with conversations in private peer groups.
Yeah.
And then I can talk about this stuff like this, like, what happens when you deal with an employee death? Like, does that need to be in your acquisition playbook? Probably not. But no one has talked about that. Ever.
Do you think having some sort of, like, almost a central wiki with these guides is the way, or like something that's paid because someone has to go through the effort to put it all together?
I don't think so. I honestly don't think so. Well, the problem with, like, wikis is that internal company documents that you basically force your employees to use, but also helps them because, like, that's where everything lives. Makes a lot of sense. But wikis where other business operators go to, like, learn about problems, there's just difficult things. Number one, you will never get the full gamut of, like, the SMB ownership experience in a playbook or a document, or if you take every single Twitter thread. Again, seriously, I've never seen someone, here's how I fire my employees. Here's how to deal with an employee death.
Someone should write that as a tweet, like the whole guide.
Someone should, yeah, please, just to prove me wrong, frankly. But it's like, the problem with wikis is like, those are a couple things that people are going to have to deal with, and it's a paired problem. You will never have the full gamut of the experience on a wiki. And number two is to actually make a wiki, like, valuable. You have to retrain someone's brain, like an operator's brain, that when they encounter a problem, they go to the wiki because they know they can find the answer. That's a two-part problem of, like, you will never have the answer, and you have to retrain someone's brain, which are two incredibly difficult things to do.
Yeah, no, completely makes sense.
Yeah.
I think that answer is super helpful. 2 more questions for you.
Yeah, let's do it.
So, in your travels, doing these meetups, doing the Rand Run, what common thread or threads, I'll let you pick one or more, connect the searchers from state to state?
Sorry, repeat that?
Yeah, so in your travels, in doing these meetups, are there any themes from one to the next that connect the operators and business buyers?
Yeah, like, this is an entirely different thought, but I have a new appreciation of, like, what the American dream is, because in every single city, it felt like I met and spoke with the same type of people in every single city. Like, the whole SMB Twitter thing is fantastic. Everyone has a similar level of ambition, I keep saying risk-orientedness, risk of adverseness, but everyone has similar goals. People want to do really great, compelling things, and it felt like I met the same level of, like, ambitious people in every single city. So that's the thing that like unites everyone.
So just people that want to grind and want to create a better life for themselves and their families.
Yeah,
Like.
yeah, absolutely.
Definitely lots of those people out there on the acquisition sites. Just
Again,
the deal.
I met them at like 16 different cities. You met like the same type of person. It's like everyone's doing something different in a different business in a different city, but everyone had like very similar goals and ideals, which I don't know. Again, it's like reflective of what America is to me.
And I think to that point too, I mean, I can definitely attest like that's indicative of when I talk with searchers or buyers on Zoom calls, because I'm not crazy like you doing all these meetups, albeit I do travel a lot.
You're a co-pilot with me, man. Passenger seat.
You can fly the jet, like the jet.
Yeah, okay.
That's definitely a theme that I see is like people that just want to grind and they want something that's, better subjectively for themselves and like for their families in whatever way you want to interpret that.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know. I just agree wholeheartedly.
One last question. What have you learned from your tour that you did not know when you started?
I actually didn't expect the number of cool ideas that were going to come out of this. There have been like 4 large things. I want to execute on all of them. I can only do one at a time, which is very frustrating.
Yeah.
But I had no idea the amount of like ideation that was going to happen. I think if you're, in your business, heads down, working like I have been, it's easy to fall into a mindset of you sort of know how to do everything, and what you like, the thing that you need to do to advance your business is just repeat that thing more. In this case, I found like 4 different big ideas that are just really, really compelling. One of them is just a mixture of like a new peer group I'm going to host. Typically, we've got 5 to 7 people in each cohort, and we charge $3,000 a year to be a part of that. There's a free trial associated with it. But I was like, man, there's so many people I talk to who they run either smaller businesses, or that price point is just difficult for them, or even that they just dislike the format. Some people, they come, they join a peer group, they try it for a free trial, say, hey, I just want a different format.
Yeah.
And I didn't think about this until I was on the Rand run, but I was like, well, what if I just add more people, increase the time a smaller amount, charge a lower price, and change the format to be something different? I'm like, yeah, I could totally do that. I can help more people doing this, and I can still make it profitable and incentivized for me to grow and help other people. So we're going to be testing a new peer group format out here soon that should be more inclusive of people with lower price points who are still like buying companies.
Awesome.
Yeah. And a couple of other ideas. Steve Weissner wants me to like do the same Rand run again, but hire a videographer to ride passenger seat and just do the whole like lifestyle vlog content. I'm like, yeah, this could actually totally work. And immediately when we started talking about that on Twitter, I got 4 people to like offer sponsorship, not hard offer sponsorship, but like, they'd like, yeah, I'm interested.
You could make a Netflix documentary hit every state.
Yeah, that's true. Getting the Netflix deal would be a different challenge.
So, okay, last question, not from the notes, just in the interest of time here. So, for someone that's recently bought a business, an acquisition entrepreneur that is contemplating the peer groups, what is your pitch to them? And I know you're a salesperson, but just in general, why should someone join a peer group, and what does it look like from a high level as far as like times that you meet every month or week, or the cadence?
Yeah, I think there's 3 main reasons to join a peer group. Number 1 is camaraderie, right? The business ownership journey is lonely. Being able to talk with other people who understand you, who have been in your shoes before or will be in your shoes, and people who care about you, I think it's incredibly important. It makes like life more fun. Just the personality aspect. Second aspect is far more practical, which is a return on your investment, right? So you join a peer group, you talk with other smart business owners who are doing interesting things in their companies, and you are there to solve problems in your business and get ideas and inspiration from others on how you can be doing your job better as a business owner. And the idea is that you need to be able to see those benefits on your P&L. Like you should be able to take tangible conversations that you have inside of your peer group and apply them to your P&L and pay for the cost of you joining a peer group in the first place. Ideally, you pay a few $1,000s, whatever the price is, and then you end up coming away with $20,000 in cost savings, revenue generation, anything like that. So, first reason is just personality aspect. Like, it's very fun to be in a peer group. Solve the business ownership journey's lonely problem.
Meet people, make friends.
Yeah, exactly. And then see them in person.
Yeah.
Second problem is just very practical. See it on your P&L. Like, benefit your business, join a peer group. And then third aspect is it's a combination of the first and the second, but it's emergencies. When you go through a true emergency in your business or your personal life, you need a peer group or a support network of some kind of people you can lean on, who you can basically call at 12 a.m. and they will answer the phone and actually stay up with you until 3 a.m. until you've talked yourself out of whatever is going on. It could be a business emergency. It could be a personal life crisis. You need those people, and those relationships have to be developed before you hit an emergency. If you had an emergency or a crisis and you're alone, that's what you will experience it alone entirely, and going through those experiences, very, very difficult. But with other people, I mean, even just having someone to soundboard something, someone who you trust and have talked to for a while, who already understands what you're going through, you don't have to give them any context into anything that you're doing. It's super powerful when you hit those, bumps in the road. So those are the three main reasons.
And what does the cadence look like for number of meetings a week, a month?
Yeah, we've got a couple different formats at this point. It's every 3 or 4 weeks, between 60 and 90 minutes at a time. That's and then so depending on how you boil that down, every year 12 to 16 meetings.
Do you give homework, or are these like structured, or how's that work?
The structure is pretty simple. I send an email a couple days before the call asking people to answer a few simple questions. Feel free to steal this, everyone, but the first question is just like, hey, give us an update in the last few weeks. Like, how has it gone for you? Just tell us how it's going. Number 2 is actually like bring a topic or discussion point or idea, anything you're struggling with in your business to the group. Anything that you want to talk about, where do you want to focus the discussion around? And then the third question is just like a revolving question of I change it, right? It could be, hey, we're just running into 2024. What are your 2024 goals this year? Or it could be, hey, we are a couple months into 2023. Into 2024. How did 2023 wrap up for you? Did it wrap up in a way you expected? That kind of stuff. So the third question is a revolving question. I change it from every month.
Got it. Well, Rand, thanks for hopping on here, and it's been great catching up, and I feel like I know or understand a lot more about your business now than before. So good talk with you, man.
Absolutely. Thanks for hosting. Thanks for doing this. We're at SM Bash today, and it's gonna be a fun event, man. We're gonna meet a bunch of cool people, and thanks for hosting this podcast one more time.
Yeah, of course.